So, Amie,
Zachary.
Avery,
What up?
I was at my local tap the other day, and
Was it George's?
It was, of course, George's buffet. The George's is assumed; it's an implied George's. You see,
Yes.
I was at my local tap the other day when a specter walked in and sat down next to me at the bar, held up a hand containing a book, and inside this book was the other cryptids of Iowa. You'll remember on our previous episode that we talked quite a bit about cryptids like the Hodag and Babe the blue question mark.
Ox. It's definitely
Ox.
ox.
It's
Who's
ox.
to say? Who's to say?
Most people.
But you also remember the local Van Meter visitor who Avery kind of gave a really spirited explanation of. I didn't realize that there were some other, maybe less known cryptids in the Iowa space. I opened this book that the stranger at the bar showed me, and in it was the Ames acupuncturist, which is, of course, residents of Ames have awoken to find themselves covered in needles with a shadowy figure hunkered over them, dispensing weird dietary advice. Have you heard of this one?
No.
No.
And then there's, of course, the Council Bluffs tonsil tuff, a creature that steals residents' tonsils, I guess.
You're lying.
The Muscatine malcontent, a cryptid on city council who tried to vote out the popularly elected mayor.
Wait.
You're lying.
These are real.
You're lying.
These are real.
With the Lemmy lurker, or the Lemmy licker on a good day, cha-cha-cha. The Dubuque Denison, which is just one that lives in Dubuque. I guess, I don't know if you knew this, but people who live in Dubuque are all cryptids, every single one.
We're being put on, Avery.
The Charles City Creep, the Humboldt Haunt,
This is a bit.
the Trainer Terror, the Madrid Menace, the Kia Cuck.
Wait.
This is
wait,
so a bit.
Wait, that's a good one. No.
It's devolved.
The Coming, well, it's a family show.
Well, you're just making dirty jokes now.
Yeah. The Kia Cuck. Mm-hmm. Cuck? Question mark? Sorry, eyeglasses
As soon
come
as I
down.
didn't know
Both
the
of y'all
must-
have eyeglasses. I can't do it. The Kia Cuck. Cuck?
As soon as you did the Muscatine one, I was like, no. Because that really happened. That really happened.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah, R.I.P. Mayor Diana Broderson. Still alive, but not in office. Welcome to Cornhole Champions, a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line, where we throw bags at the state's biggest stories. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. It's Wednesday, and I'm joined today by Starting Line's Amie Rivers and Avery Staker. It was a messy week in Iowa politics. The pot boiled over at a town hall featuring U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley, the only Iowa congressman to hold a public hall since Republican leaders told legislators to stop holding them. We also go over one legislator's banana pants packet that he circulated across the House. Apparently it was Satan and liberal Christianity the whole time. We also go over a few things coming up this week in the Iowa Legislature, what you need to know for this week in Iowa. That's coming up on Cornhole Champions. Thanks for joining us for Cornhole Champions. I'm Zachary Oren Smith. I'm joined today by Amie Rivers, the newsletter editor at Iowa Starting Line. Hi, Amie.
Hi.
And I'm joined by Avery Staker, the social media manager at Iowa Starting Line. Hello, Avery.
Hello.
And I have one correction that I need to make. Rick Brewer, an excellent reporter and listener from Michigan, sent in his own WCMU article explaining that Michigan, not Minnesota, may have a better claim to Babe the Blue Bull. I will not be correcting it to Babe the Blue Ox. It's just not a thing that I'm going to cotton to. But I appreciate Michigan showing its status here. First story. Less than 100 days in, President Trump has gone after the judicial branch, signed an executive order aimed at eliminating the Department of Education, urged people to buy stocks in his billionaire Elon Musk's company Tesla, fired 2 members of the Federal Trade Commission, gutted enforcement funding for the IRS. I could go on. Understandably, normal people have been looking to our Congress, one of our Constitution's primary checks on the executive branch, and found them to be compliant. Congress just passed a continuing resolution keeping the government open and the Trump train leaving the station on time. At the grassroots level, there's been a wellspring of interest in an age-old tradition of yelling at people who represent you.
Yes.
But Republican leaders have asked their congressional members to do anything but. U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley deserves some props, I think, for showing up in Hampton, Iowa last week for a town hall. Sure, it got ugly, and we'll get to that, but attaboy, Chuck. Amie, you were at this rally, I think right outside the door, right? Can you tell me what that looked like on the ground?
Well, he had a town hall in what basically amounted to like a courthouse or city meeting room kind of thing upstairs in the second floor of the courthouse. But even if you got there really, really early, I mean, I'm hearing reports from people that got there 45 minutes early, couldn't get in. It was already full. So, I mean, he knew these things were going to be big, right? So, like, yes, props to him for showing up, but I think he could have had a bigger venue. I mean, I'm sure that there are bigger venues in Hampton. I'm sure that there are anywhere in Iowa that he could have had this and had more people there if he was really interested in hearing from a lot of a true cross-section of the community. So the rest of the folks kind of were just outside in the first floor, sort of congregating in this courthouse. There are dozens, maybe 100, 150 people that were just waiting to try to talk to Chuck Grassley. Initially, his people were like, he might come down and talk. So they stuck around. And then right at 9 when the town hall began, apparently there was an announcement made that he was not going to be coming down. And that's when everybody really was starting to get angry. And that's when the empty chair town hall began on the floor below where the non-empty town hall.
And on the previous episode of Cornhole Champions, we spoke a little bit about kind of what is the value of a town hall, and I'd invite folks to re-listen to that episode for some of our thoughts on that. But Amie, I think you got a rare insight into like kind of what issues were front of mind for people as that decided to come to this. Can you give me a sense of the kinds of issues that you heard about from Iowans at this Grassley town hall?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big cross-section of folks. You had a lot of folks that were older Iowans. Obviously, this is easier for you to come to a town hall at 9 a.m. on a Friday if you don't have, like, a 9-to-5 job, 9 to 5. So, like, I mean, there's always going to be a lot more retirees. But also, like, they're more acutely worried about cuts to Social Security. I think, at that point, the Commerce Secretary hadn't yet said that scary phrase of, oh, if you miss a payment, it's not a big deal. I'm sure that's freaking people out right now. But they already knew that the government and Elon Musk had been saying things like, we're going to cut Social Security, we're going to cut Medicare, Medicaid. These are programs that retirees absolutely rely on. I mean, without that, most people don't have a pension anymore. I mean, boomers maybe still have one, but it's still dwindling. So, I mean, people are definitely reliant on Social Security, and that was a big, big issue. But it really ran the gamut. I mean, we heard from the carbon pipeline people. We heard from people worried about, taking away healthcare or cutting healthcare. We heard about just Elon Musk steamrolling through federal agencies and cutting positions. There was a person who worked at a museum who spoke about museum funding getting cut, grant funding getting cut from the federal government. These things are touching so many lives, and that's, I think, why you're seeing this huge groundswell of people opposing it.
Avery, you were monitoring and helping us. Iowa Starting Line, I think, had some our coverage of this event blew up in a major way on Twitter specifically. You were kind of monitoring all this coming in. Was there anything that you monitored that really surprised you?
Not necessarily. It's a lot of stuff that I've seen whenever we do any sort of coverage of these kinds of things. The one thing that stood out to me the most, that it got me thinking the most, it's something that I've been thinking about these last few months with the terrible way that the election went, but there are a lot of people in the comments of a lot of the videos specifically referring to, a lot of the older people that are in these town halls, many of them admitting that they had voted for Chuck Grassley for a very long time, up until even the last time he was reelected.
Right.
And people are kind of ragging on them for that. And I'm all for holding people accountable for how they vote and the decisions that they make, but I think there's a level of vitriol that is coming from like the liberal side, and not like this is just an observation I'm making. I'm not saying it's the overarching feel of the situation that everybody should have, but it is something that I like to call out, because at the end of the day, like, you vote for who you vote for, but also you are subjected to what that person does.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And a key strategy of Republican officials has been to say that they're going to do all of these things, and then they don't do that, or they do the opposite when they get into office. Mm-hmm. They've been really good at kind of propagandizing their voters. And I think people forget how easy it is to be misinformed, especially today. And again, I'm all for holding people accountable for how they vote and how long they do that, even after they're shown time and time again that they're not getting what they vote for and they're not getting what they say they want to vote for. But also, I wish there was a little bit more compassion from especially very privileged people on the other side of things, because some of those people you're not like an older person whose Social Security is under threat, and they never anticipated that being under threat, because they were misinformed of that.
Right.
And I wish there was a little bit more, I think everybody has a responsibility to inform themselves properly, and there are ways to do that, but I also wish there was kind of multiple truths being held at the same time.
I love that point, because when we're talking, if we're trying to build a more unified sense of, a unified support around issues, and Iowa Starting Line has values, right? We're not a, down the middle, we're with no one a publication, right? You go to our About Me page, we've got values that we are pursuing with our journalism here at the publication. I mean, if we want to do that, right, I think it does take a broader sense. We have to open our aperture and think about who else, right, we could find allyship with. Who else can we find camaraderie with? Who else can we build that kind of coalition on? I'm from a red state, Mississippi, and I remember particularly when I came to Iowa, I remember just everyone wants to blame Mississippians for all of the bad policies that our elected officials wreak on us, right? And I remember, there's a ton of people that want better things for that state. There are tons of people in this state that want better things for this state.
Yeah.
The notion, right, that that we can, that particularly folks that are trapped in echo chambers, folks that are suffering under these legislations, the idea that we're going to, blame them when it's the policymakers, right, that are controlling this, when it's big radio station conglomerates, it's gutted TV operations, it's it's an information problem, right? And until we begin thinking systemically about the ways that these larger structures are shaping, or I don't know, I think that sense that how you idiot for voting for this guy, right? You're not thinking about the bigger picture, and that bums me out in a big way. I love your point on that, Avery.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I've been doing a lot of kind of reading and research just as a way to comfort myself on past civil rights movements and other sort of large political actions, and I stumbled across a video of an indigenous activist who led a lot of charges protesting the installations of carbon pipelines. And specifically, he said, he was talking about when they were protesting the Keystone Access Pipeline, a lot of the people that they had to work with were farmers in these super rural areas, these super right-leaning red areas. And, he was talking about the strategy of, he framed it, had an analogy of you got to invite them into the house and kind of open doors for them. So they met them with language that they understood of, if this pipeline comes into your land, this is your farmland, you'll lose your farmland if this happens. And if indigenous people, if we know one thing about indigenous people, they know what it's like to lose land to a government, and so he was almost inviting them in with language that they understood, and then showing them, connecting dots for them. And by the end of their kind of push against the access pipeline, they had a lot of these these super right-leaning people talking about like the land back movement and indigenous land sovereignty and stuff like that. And I think that strategy is, I like that, especially as somebody who I'm a trans non-binary person that grew up in a super red part of Iowa. Like it's something that kind of piques my interest a lot, as I have a connection to this state, and it's my home, and I see how far it's fallen from grace, and knowing that there's still kind of pathways to bring it back by meeting people on a level that they're on.
Was it Wisconsin where that guy waited 7 hours to speak his piece on a trans bill, and then his mind got changed? We have to remember, like, that's what politics is about. Like, it's not what did you do before, it's can we change minds now? Who can we get to man this barricade with us? Like, wherever you came from now, like, are you willing to do it now? And I think if we can get to that point, that would be a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a thing that I'm not hearing from either of you is that, like, we need to spend a bunch of time policing each other, the other folks in our coalition, right? Like, that's not what that's about. But, like, but the idea that, like, we can build bigger people power around these issues is possible, right? And if whenever we're willing to think about how wide our coalition can get in order to reach values that we share, outcomes that we share, or want to share.
Absolutely.
Second story, an Iowa Legislature circulated a pamphlet last week detailing Satan's plan to champion women's liberation, LGBTQ rights, and gender neutrality, which was a new one for me. That was in the House. That was a Representative Brett Barker, who was distributing this pamphlet, had a pamphlet distributed across the membership in the House. He signed off on it, and do you guys monitor this? Y'all see this packet?
I saw your video on it. I thought that was a good one. Yeah,
it was spicy. It was spicy. I was interested in this because I am fundamentally interested in that lens of ideology, the ways that this kind of like subconscious gut feelings and values of our upbringings impact the things that come out in a bill, that come out in a chamber debate. And this one was super duper interesting because it went, nothing was spared, right? Islam, progressive Christianity, abortion, women's liberty, all of these things were like seen as this the like kind of final word of the devil. What do you guys make of this?
I think women's liberation is a really interesting one. Like, have they not updated this since like the 1960s or what's women's liberation? Like the ability to have a job, to get a credit card without a man, a bank loan. What are we talking about here?
Taking women away from rearing children. That's the root of all evil.
And homemaking. I think it's so... I don't want to say it's so amazing because I like kind of expect this at this point, but these are the people who grandstand about protecting women when they're firing shots at trans people on the... And it's like, it's super disjointed because... in those spaces, when the person that you're talking about is trans people, you're going to say that they're attacking women, they're doing this, they're doing that. But when it comes to something like this, it's just like radio silence. Like he had every opportunity to, bureaucratic mess up, whatever, like procedural screw up, whatever. He had every opportunity to like go on the House floor and be like, I don't think this is right. I think women deserve the right to have this and this and this. And he never did that. But when it comes to, I just think that is so indicative that like these people are only going to care about the things that they say they care about when that serves something that they're trying to do. They're never actually going to see it as like a true value or a true belief, because they're in situations like this, they're kind of shirking that belief that they claim they have in order to avoid accountability.
And there's an update to this. So after I published my video, which Starting Line just keeps delivering in terms of going. I appreciate the viewers just seem to love They're clearly responding to the work. It's clearly resonating because this video did really well. And I got a email from House Republicans saying, wondering why I didn't reach out for comment, right? That Brett Barker has been giving a statement to reporters, and I have that statement here. So this is kind of the explanation, right, for kind of how this pamphlet got out there. Quote, I appreciate you reaching out. I've been asked to sign off on dozens of flyers this session. I was in a hurry and did not ask to read this one, and that's my error. It's a rookie mistake, and going forward, I'll be asking for things to be sent to me so I can take time to review before initialing distribution forms.
Was that an apology?
I ask you, reading through it, I didn't read the words "I'm sorry," or I don't think Islam is evil.
Or does he disagree with anything in it?
So I did follow up, and I said if Representative Brett Barker would like to kind of join the podcast and explain kind of which parts of the pamphlet he disagrees with, if any, he has an open invitation. That stands. If the representative would like to join us, I would love to hear from him because there was I think for me the final word of this is that if we believe that literally the devil is the perpetrator of all that disagrees with me, that kind of zero-sum political framing leaves zero room for reasonable people disagreeing, right? It leaves zero room for people for the notion of debate, the notion of convincing anyone to your side. This conversation we were having earlier about coalition building, that's not a coalition building mindset, right? What that is we are in power and we will do with power what we will, right? Because it's Satan we're fighting, not reasonable people that disagree.
I'm old enough to remember when the Republicans actually cared about the Constitution and things like freedom of and from religion.
Well,
Man,
so long as it's not the government taking away, establishing, religious study in school. Oh wait, we did have that Bible study bill. Sorry, I forgot about that one.
Oh,
and that would be the federal government. It's the federal government we got to watch out. States can do what they want.
The federal government is trying to abolish the Department of Education, probably unsuccessfully. But if they do it, it'll go back to the states, and then we will have, our theocratic private schools. That's the good part, actually, ironically, is that now that more of this stuff is becoming out in the open and more people are understanding that that's where you're headed, I think that pendulum has swung too far. I think that you are going to see voters sort of rejecting that. I don't know.
Again, procedural mistake or not, he still had every opportunity to be I don't believe women leaving the house is a way for Satan to enter the world. He had every opportunity to say that. Yeah. And he didn't. And it's
and we hope he will.
Brett Barker come on the show.
And we stand ready to hear him out when he does.
Yeah.
Third story. Over the weekend, the Des Moines Register published a report on Iowa's controversial MOMS MOMS program. Last year, the state distributed $1 million in taxpayer funding to 7 pregnancy resource centers as part of an initiative to support pregnant women and discourage abortions. These centers, which are primarily anti-abortion and often religiously affiliated, offer counseling, parenting classes, and material assistance. The program was championed by Governor Kim Reynolds and the Republican-controlled legislature, but questions remain about its effectiveness, transparency, and the nature of the services provided. Did you guys get a chance to check this one out?
No,
I haven't.
That's okay. One of the things that I thought was super interesting was the reach of this program. The pregnancy resource centers collectively reached 561 clients across 33 counties in just 4 months in the last year. That's for $1 million in funding, which I found pretty remarkable.
I just did the math, and that's over $1,700 per person.
Which, if it's a direct check to a person trying, a family, a household trying to raise a kid, I'm all about. To be clear, right? That sounds like money well spent. But the idea, but when we know that this is like about ideology, right? When we know that it's about ideology and it's not even effectively like reaching so many of these folks. This is
Right.
this is the alternative to groups like funding groups like Planned Parenthood, right?
Or funding medical clinics. Folks that do ultrasounds without medical training. Okay. So they anything else that you would need to see if you've got a healthy pregnancy, you actually have to go to like a real doctor for. So like these people are basically just existing to be like, don't have abortions. God said no. Cool. Like, why are we spending all this money on this when we
It's
could
a
be
great
giving
question.
people actual health care? Like, our rural hospitals, our rural birthing centers are disappearing. Our OBGYNs are fleeing the state because they're not allowed by state law to do simple procedures to help people through things like miscarriages of wanted pregnancies. We could actually be funding, like, things to help people stay in the state and passing laws that don't force them to flee. I don't know.
Yeah.
That that period, point blank. That's it. Like, I don't even want to entertain the if it reached 561. Does that justify it? Because the whole message behind these things, the whole intent of these pregnancy resource centers is not one to actually serve people. It's to, spread a very zealous ideology about pregnancy and birth and the choice that women and pregnant people should have to care for their health. And I don't want them to have a penny of my taxpayer money.
Yeah, because it's just ideologically driven. Like, as you said.
Yeah.
Obviously, we need more money aimed at getting better outcomes for pregnant women, right? The reality with infant mortality rates, maternal mortality rates being what they are, the number of OBGYNs available
Yep.
in the state, the number of birthing wards that you mentioned, Amy, this is a tremendous problem, and one that you're right, that as with these atmospherics of what procedures they are and are not allowed to pursue, as we get into this like kind of like theoretical territory about like the life of the mother, right? And like kind of when does that become when at what point in time are we talking about the life of the mother as like a
Seriously.
I don't know, it's a dangerous territory to be plodding around in, and that we're putting, and rather than putting money towards like time-tested, evidenced places that have been supporting this work, because this could have gone to the midwives program at the University of Iowa. This could have gone to the this could have gone to the birthing ward in a small town somewhere. It could have gone to. We could have spent $1 million incentivizing pay for OBGYNs working in rural areas. We could have done this. We could have done that, but. We're choosing we're choosing to appease the kind of like right to life crowd by putting money toward putting this mom's programmatic money towards these pregnancy resource centers. And it is a shame, right, that this money can't go towards a place that's making these mothers' lives healthier.
Yeah, and who's right to life? Because if you look at, like, ProPublica just did a story on, like, Texas has passed a lot of similar laws to us, and their maternal mortality rate is skyrocketing. So women are dying because of these policies.
On that note, fourth story, Investigate Midwest has a new report out about Iowa's persistent water pollution problems. Their analysis reveals that nearly 80% of Iowa's impaired river segments have remained in poor condition for at least a decade, with some waterways staying polluted for over 20 years. Despite this alarming trend, state lawmakers continue to resist implementing stronger regulations on industrial agriculture, one of the primary sources of contamination. Agricultural runoff carrying sediment, chemicals, and pesticides has transformed once pristine waterways like the Yellow River, affecting everything from recreational activities to drinking water quality. In the report, there are 65 river segments and 6 lake segments that failed to meet water quality standards over the last 20 years. We've all been living in the state for years and years and years, some of us since birth. And I'm kind of curious, does this kind of fit with the narrative that you would expect? Is this a surprise for y'all?
This has changed a lot over the years. I think, there used to be a lot more, like, we used to go tubing in the river, we used to be able to drink from the tap and not have to test it for nitrates and phosphates and things like that. And Yeah, it was definitely, I think, opening up those CAFOs, the concentrated animal feeding operations, and just those skyrocketing across the state that have also just really changed the water, honestly. I mean, you look at Des Moines and the fact that, the city waterworks tried to sue basically to recoup the funding that they were putting in to get the nitrates out of their drinking water, and the state was like, no.
Yeah, this is something that I'm younger than you guys, so it's just so upsetting because I remember being younger and like going to the lake and going to the river and jumping in, and it's such like a basic everyday thing that's being polluted to serve like a corporate interest mostly, because these are like big industrial farms that are doing this, not like local small family ones. These are farms that are they're producing things that aren't even looping back into our state. Totally. And I think so like our state is just getting degraded and destroyed for the service of somebody their only interest in our state is degrading and destroying our natural environment.
Many of which you don't even live here. There's a really excellent but really required listening for listeners of the podcast. Austin Frerich's Barons. Yeah. He came on the podcast a couple episodes ago. I'll link it in the show notes. To talk about the way kind of his work, kind of uncovering the consolidation of industrial agriculture in states like Iowa, right? The thing that there are 2 points that I wanted to kind of end us with, right? Like one, I loved that this piece by Investigate Midwest like really leaned into like the recreation piece, which is something that I don't think we focus enough on, right? Like when after year over year, as you read these stories about coliform levels being high in Lake McBride, which is near where I live, the ways that we hear about E. coli and these the bacterial load that this water carries over time. Even on days where it's clear, right? Even on days where we don't have algal blooms in the lake, does that make you less likely to? Does that encourage you to go recreate in what should be one of the natural wonders around us, right? And I think there's a real year over year impact as we trust our lakes and rivers less, right? As we turn away from these what ought to be the natural treasures of our landscape, right? So I appreciated the amount of time that this Investigate Midwest piece linked in the show notes spends on the Yellow River and how it transformed over time. Another thing I wanted to point to was when I was at Iowa Public Radio, I did we did a big water quality package looking at the extent to which the Nutrient Reduction Act, nutrient's the word that the state uses for chemicals like phosphorus and nitrogen. The Nutrient Reduction Act was imposed about 10, 15 years ago, and the series was kind of looking at its impact, right? What my piece was focused on was the expense that local governments are having to put into their waterworks in order to get these things, in order to outfit these things to handle this new, the new loads, these new contaminants, right? Because traditional water facilities just don't have the ability to filter out nitrates, right? We're having to invest in these mega projects that involve reverse osmosis machines in order to, which are very expensive, prohibitively expensive, to filter this water and make it safe to drink. Because to be clear, right, like waterworks around our state are doing admirable work under hard conditions to try to make sure you have safe water to drink at your tap. But you as the taxpayer, us as a state, are having to spend more and more money on this infrastructure, right? Because we are not we are not dealing with the problem at the source, right? We are having to deal with this problem at our water facility rather than stopping the polluters at the source, right? That is a choice. That is a policy decision to strategize for dealing with the impact rather than preventing the impact from taking place.
Yeah, and these places, especially smaller places that are trying to retrofit their water treatment centers, are doing it on the backs of massive federal grants to help them that are now in jeopardy. I mean, I was at not a rally, a empty chair town hall in Waterloo, and Intercog was talking about this. That's the regional thing that helps the small towns around. And they were saying, are we going to get these grants? And we're saying, hopefully. Hoping is a strategy now for these water treatment plants. So, yeah.
Drawing us to a conclusion here, our fifth story, I wanted us to just kind of walk through a legislative update. We're talking on Tuesday morning. We'll have a day of debate, and then this episode will come out Wednesday morning. So there may be some of this that has changed since when you're hearing this conversation. But I wanted to go over two ideas that are floating through the legislature, Amie and Avery. One is to lower the age required to be able to buy and own a handgun from 21 years old to 18. What do you guys make of this one?
Solving
what's
the important problems of our time.
I want you guys think of an 18-year-old that you guys know. Or think of a few. Think of like a group of 18 to 21-year-olds that you guys know, and then imagine them
with guns,
having a handgun.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Also, it's already so easy to have access to weapons. Even though technically you have to be 21 to buy a handgun, the people that want them, there's not really much stopping them from having access to a weapon. So this is coming from somebody who I think weapon access should be very limited. I think I'm very much a gun control advocate, but what back to your point, Amie, what issue is this solving?
I'm relatively libertine about kind of what I think regulations ought to be on guns, right? I really enjoy shooting skeet. I really enjoy shooting trap. And I'm a fan of the use, for long arms specifically, I'm a fan of responsible gun ownership and a fan of seeing, this being, when we talk about recreation in lakes, rivers, and streams, I also think at the gun range is a great form of recreation. Handguns hit me a little strange, right? Because you look at the statistics for what crimes are committed with, right? It's not long arms typically, right? Handguns serve a much larger piece of this. They're smaller. There's the issues with them, people keeping them and not locked away,
Mm-hmm.
and you've heard the horror stories of kids, finding them and them just charging. There's just a lot. I don't know. I grew up in a NRA trained gun household, and I'm really thankful for the gun classes that I grew up taking. In my experience, there were responsible ways to own a gun. But when you begin lowering the age to 18 for what is for me a kind of problem, what can be kind of a problem sector within within the gun community, I don't know, man. This gives me the heebie-jeebies. I too think about the 18-year-olds that I meet sometimes, and I think man, this, God bless, they can vote, they can serve the country, but maybe there's a reason why we don't let them drink booze. Maybe that developmentally, right, we should be thinking about the extent to which we should let them have access to handguns. These are folks that can have access to long arms, right? So there's nothing preventing the same subset from doing all the recreation work that I was talking about. You can come to the range and shoot skeet with me any day, right? But when it comes to handguns, right, this is trying to extend that to that younger subset.
Yeah, what kind of purpose? Like you said, there's trap teams all around the state. People hunt, I grew up with people hunting, and that's fine. But what is the purpose of letting somebody have a handgun?
They'll say safety, which good guy, the whole good guy with a gun, bad guy with a gun, we know the stats on that are hog shit.
If everybody's allowed to have a gun, who is safe?
Right.
If there are just guns everywhere.
Yeah. The suicide rate goes up the more guns you have in circulation. It's very incredibly easy to kill yourself with a firearm, especially a small one.
Yeah. Add in that statistics on domestic violence, right? The prevalence of the way that the presence of firearms in a household and the way that contributes to dangerous systems for people in domestically violent relationships with people. I mean, the statistics are pretty grim. The other idea floating around is to eliminate the ability for cities to have police review boards, which is kind of pretty interesting.
This is just like an Iowa City hate law, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Right now, cities like Iowa City, I think they're relatively rare in the state. They have these kind of citizen-appointed boards that review. The city council appoints members to them, and they review. They review on kind of an application basis, right? Instances that citizens feel where police acted in a way that was untoward, right? It's this kind of like additional level of civilian oversight over the police force, which has ultimate jurisdiction over the lives and livelihoods of the people they oversee, right? And the Iowa Legislature wants to take away that kind of point of oversight, of civilian oversight. What do you guys make of that? Is that how does that idea?
What's their argument? Is it that we already have that oversight in the form of our city councils?
I think I look forward to the debate, right? Maybe some novel ideas come through. This is an idea that's been present in the legislature before. This is a returner. On one hand, let's talk about let's remember that these aren't super effective organizations, right? I was a city reporter covering these kinds of the actions of these boards, and the number of I can't count on one hand how many times this has actually resulted in some action by the police department to censure a cop, because it never resulted in an action to censure the cop, right? It's it doesn't get added to professional even if they find malfeasance in the way that a cop handled a particular issue, it never results in some form of accountability, right?
So they already don't have teeth.
I'm not. I was talking to someone yesterday, and I was saying this is not the kind of thing when we're talking about trying to add real meaty civilian oversight to our government, to government officials that have such a high degree of jurisdiction in our lives, that have such a degree of power in our lives.
Yeah.
This isn't actually the place that I would want us to be spending much of our time, just because in practice they really just do not have that much power. But what they do have the ability to do is to kind of raise a stink about a particular issue, right? So if there is a action that civilians feel need additional, they want people paying attention to, it's kind of like a way of getting a soundboard to say yeah, that was really bad, right? Or yeah, that seems like they could have handled that differently. So there's part of me that I understand. To be clear, anytime you take an L, that's a bad idea, right? But I just don't know how much these boards actually are a form of accountability in our cities. Write in if you've had experience where you've had a dish. You write in and say, tell me about an instance where a police review board has really impacted a situation in a positive way. I'd love to know. This is not me saying that they're bad organizations, but just I haven't seen much evidence of them having a real impact on our lives. But write in, let me know. Do you guys have anything else you want to add on this end?
Is it just because they're new? Is that why maybe we're not seeing a lot of impact yet? Or is it just because there aren't too many? It's basically just Iowa City?
They just don't have a lot of power, right? In terms of what they have the ability to do with an investigation. I mean, they're civilian boards. They don't have any more. They have access to what is publicly available about an instance involving police altercation. They can interview. They can record statements. But this isn't a court, right? This isn't this doesn't have legal grounding, right? They're a blue ribbon committee formed by the city council that gets appointed and can look into stuff that gets filed to them.
So basically, Republicans just want to take that and be nope, sounds liberal and woke, and give more power to the police, basically. So even though the police review boards don't actually have any power, Republicans are scared of citizens getting more power. Is that basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that about.
Okay.
It's almost like a censorship thing. Like you said, the where they have had the power is raising a stink about stuff. You know what I mean? And totally. I think since this is it sounds like it's an official kind of city appointed, city adjacent type organization. It's different when those complaints and those things come from something like that versus a local activist group.
Right.
So it's almost to me, it looks like a form of censorship. Like Amie said, they don't want, they don't even want to entertain the potential of civilians having power over the police officers that have their lives in their hands.
Yeah, heaven forbid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously there are, it can be really powerful to have your instance looked into.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak ill of folks that are like looking for that additional oversight.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what becomes of this. Again, it's an idea that has circulated before, but maybe it finds purchase in the Iowa Legislature this year.
I was gonna say they pissed him off with making them comply with like ICE things, so now they're having to try to be like, look, we'll give you this. We won't let the citizens look into you anymore.
That was another episode of Cornhole Champions. If you like the show, please rate it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. While you're at it, sign up for my newsletter at cornholechampions.substack.com and get these episodes straight to your inbox when they drop Wednesday mornings. Cornhole Champions is a weekly podcast powered by Iowa Starting Line. This podcast is produced by me with music by Avery Mossman. Cornhole Champions is a proud member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative. We'll see you with a new episode next Wednesday. Until then, I'm Zachary Oren Smith.
I'm Amie Rivers.
And I'm Avery Sneaker.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.